So here we are. I'm no longer at Disney, so hopefully you enjoyed the children's message. Here I am at church again, and I'm looking at this tough gospel lesson, a lesson that many times preachers will avoid. As Mary Gerges says, there's not a lot of good coloring sheets that go along with the story of the beheading of John the Baptist. This story in the Synoptic Gospels, obviously we have it here in Mark. It's not at all in Luke. Matthew has an abbreviated version of it. And well, John, not part of the Synoptics. John's kind of his own beast anyways. So it's an interesting story, and it's one I think is important to kind of tackle. But in order to understand it, I think we need to really understand who the characters are in play, right? In our story today, we have Herod Antipas, first century ruler of Galilee. We probably know him more if you don't know him from the story of the beheading of John the Baptist, but you hear about him a little later when it comes to Jesus' own trial. Well, Herod was married to Herodias. Herodias was divorced from Herod's half-brother, and then the two of them got married. And she disliked John. Herodias disliked John because, among other things, the fact that he was preaching about this man named Jesus and causing this, commotion. She didn't like John because John continued to tell her and the community that the marriage between Herodias and Herod went against Mosaic law and it should not happen. So she really didn't like him. And then they had a daughter. And her name, in this story, her name is Herodias as well. But her real name is Salome. And we're going to hear a little bit more about her later because she has a key role in our story. And then, of course, we have John the Baptist, right? The one who was paving the way for someone greater. Before this story and in this story, John the Baptist is in prison, but he continues to preach and he continues to cause this commotion that is making people uncomfortable. And the interesting part, though, is Herod, the ruler at the time, although he put John in jail, he was very intrigued by John. He saw him as this holy, what does it say in our story? That he saw him as righteous and holy. So in a way, even though he had him imprisoned, he protected him. And Herodias knew that he was being protected by Herod, who kind of liked him. So our scene with these key players, it's Herod's birthday. And he has the people from his court and all these important people from the community at his birthday party. And it's this great feast and everybody's having a great time. And Salome, his daughter in this story, they call her Herodias, comes out and dances for them. One J term, I took a class on movies and the Bible, and we actually watched a movie on the beheading of John the Baptist and how the role of Salome is very seductive and interesting. So Salome comes out and she dances this beautiful dance for Herod and his court that's surrounding him, all of his friends. And everybody is so pleased. Herod looks at her and acts all big and says, "Hey, I will give you anything you want. You just did such a great job dancing for us. I'm going to give you anything you want." So Salome, Herodias, goes back to her mom. She knows mom does not like John. And together they devise this plan. And her mom tells her, "Go out there and tell your dad that you would like John the Baptist's head on a platter." Wow, that's a big ask. And it's interesting because I don't know for sure that it actually came from Salome or from Herodias, the daughter. I see this as the mom manipulating Salome into getting her way. And now Herod is perplexed. He doesn't know what to do. He does not want to kill John the Baptist, but he has to save face. He has to keep his promise and look good in front of all these important people that are at his birthday party. So, in the end, John the Baptist is beheaded. And again, no good color sheets. But what's interesting of this story and the way things go is there's so many parallels. We see this later during his crucifixion and everything that led up to that point. Because you see, Jesus is sent to Herod Antipas. And just like John, Herod doesn't necessarily want to kill Jesus, but the crowds are demanding it. So Herod gives in and has Jesus crucified. And you also see the beautiful work of the disciples in both of these stories. At the very end of our story today, after Salome gives the head of John the Baptist to her mother, it says, when his disciples heard about it, they came and took his body and laid it in a tomb, just like Jesus. You know, there's no gospel promise or big message of hope in this story. You know, I almost see it as a public service announcement to say that, you know, preaching the gospel, living the gospel isn't always easy. It can get you in trouble. You know, in John's case, it landed him in prison, as well as the disciples. But you're going to come up against people that don't understand, that don't agree, and it's not always going to be comfortable. You know, and sometimes it's easier to do and to say things that everybody else is doing and saying, that everybody else wants, even if you know that it's not right, that it's not true. Sometimes it's just easier to give in to the crowds. But like I said in my children's message, what's important to learn from this is that you are created wonderfully, beautifully, perfectly in God's image. You are created to be you. And as a follower of Christ, you are to be you. You are to live the gospel. You are to preach the gospel. Being you and sticking to what is right, not what everybody else wants. Amen.